So the format of the webinar is just going to be a brief presentation from myself about an overview of the infant mental health MSc, and then we'll have some time for questions. So Naomi is going to ask me some questions that kind of commonly come up. But please feel free, all of you, to just raise a hand or chip in any questions you might have as we're going along. This can be quite informal. There's no need to kind of wait. Feel free to just chip in. I'll maybe just get started because I know everybody's on quite a tight time schedule. So I'll just share my screen with you here. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Maybe thumbs up. Fab. So thank you all so much for joining this webinar introducing the Infant Mental Health MSc programme. I really appreciate you taking the time to come along, and it's lovely to see some of your faces. Thank you for that. I am Dr Fiona Sim. I'm the programme lead for this Infant Mental Health Masters, and I will just, as I said, just be sharing a wee bit of an overview on who we are, the team behind the Masters, and why we're doing what we're doing, and an overview of what content will be covered in the Masters and what our hopes are for you as potential students and graduates of this Masters programme. So this Masters is an online programme and it has 3 exit points from the programme. So you can do a PG Cert, you can do a PG Dip, or you can do the full MSc programme. And we as a MSc team are quite a diverse bunch. So I've pulled together a lot of different specialists from across the field of infant mental health. We've got some psychiatrists and psychologists, some speech and language therapists, developmental psychologists, a social worker, a Scottish Government consultant, um, and many, many more sort of infant mental health practitioners. We've got a couple of lawyers that didn't make it on here. But my aim as a programme lead is to pull together a really diverse bunch of experts within infant mental health from all different disciplines who can give us a really holistic sense of what infant mental health is and how to support it well. So, as a team, we've been kind of dreaming about building this master's for a few years now. So, I've worked alongside Professor Helen Minnis, who's top left on this screen here, um, who is a consultant psychiatrist in child and adolescent psychiatry and a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry here at the University of Glasgow. And we have been thinking about this for a long time because we've been aware of the growing interest in the field of infant mental health and the growing need for training within this field. There's been an increase in investment from Scottish Government, particularly recently, within infant mental health in terms of new teams being set up and new posts being set up to support infant mental health. But we feel that there's a bit of a gap in training offers. So we wanted to produce a master's programme that was comprehensive in building the theoretical groundwork for infant mental health. What do we mean when we're talking about it? And considering developmental psychology as well. What is typical development? And what are we looking for in terms of milestones? But then also to think about the various multi-leveled influences on the infant and child as they grow, from family to wider influences within the environment itself. And so we've tried to pull together really different groups of people for this masters who can all share their insights for this teaching program and hopefully build very sort of holistic graduates from this program. And our real aim is to raise the profile of these little people and to just show how incredible they are, how they arrive in this world ready to interact, ready to engage with the world, to shape it and to be shaped by it. Historically, we've had a bit of a sense of infants as this blank slate, but research over the past few decades has really shown us that that could not be further from the truth. They are primed and ready to go in utero for coming out into this world and making their mark. And so that's something that we really want to communicate through this programme. Now, as part of this program, we've been on this journey for a couple of years now in developing this master's program, and one of our courses, it will be studied in the PG Cert, was launched as a standalone module, and it has run for the last 2 years. We've had around 220 students have studied that course now. And that's the Foundations of Infant Mental Health course, which is part of the master's program. And some of the feedback that we've had, I've shared here. We've had really positive feedback from students. They found it incredibly helpful. And I've shared feedback here from a health visitor, an assistant psychologist, a head teacher, um, and another health and social care worker as well. And they found that the skills and the theory that we've taught was really helpful and enhanced their roles, even though they were all in quite distinct and different roles in supporting the infant. So overall, the intended learning outcomes of the programme are divided into two sections. We look at knowledge and understanding, and we look at skills and attributes. So in terms of knowledge and understanding, as I'd mentioned before, we want to look at the breadth of typical development. We want to consider the environmental influences on infant mental health and development. We believe that the centrality of relationships and attachment are so crucial and fundamental to infant mental health and development. So we spend quite a lot of time on that. And we consider various theoretical models for understanding infant mental health and development, how these relate to one another and interact with each other and support each other as well. And we also want to consider the various systems around the infant, how these provide their own unique support for the infant, and how these communicate with each other as well, because there are so many different systems around the infant. And we have a whole course dedicated to that, which was developed by a social worker and a developmental psychologist. In terms of skills and attributes, we want students to develop the skills to really engage with the evidence base around infant mental health, um, which demonstrate the competence of the infant. We want to develop skills such as critical appraisal and evaluation, and introduce students to different interventions and help them to consider the efficacy of different interventions and when they would be most useful and when they might not be appropriate. We want to consider observing infant mental health, how that's done, what are the different approaches to observing infant mental health. We want to be able to consider formulation and intervention, to develop reflective practice, to help develop students who can communicate in multidisciplinary teams. And we also want to develop research skills and clinical skills within our students through a range of different learning formats. All of our intended learning outcomes for this programme have been mapped on the Association for Infant Mental Health UK's core competencies framework, and AIM UK endorses this programme. So the core competencies develop clinicians and individuals working with infant mental health with all the core skills that are required to really make meaningful differences in supporting infant mental health. So we're really pleased for that endorsement, and we believe that the core competencies that AIM UK have developed are really robust and comprehensive. So the format of the programme is as follows. As this is an online programme, it's part-time over 3 years. So for the postgrad certificate year, it's divided up into 3 semesters. So the first semester runs September to December. And in your first year, you would study the Foundations of Infant Mental Health and Development module. That was the one I referred to earlier that we've run for the past couple of years. And the Exploring Infant Mental Health and Development module. Both of those are worth 10 credits. So both are 5 weeks long. And then in semester two, there's a 20 credit course, which is Infant Mental Health and Neurodevelopment in Practice. That was developed by a consultant psychiatrist and an infant mental health practitioner to give a kind of comprehensive background into infant mental health, and also to begin teaching on neurodevelopment, neurodiversity, neurodivergence, how that begins to grow and develop within infancy and in the early years. And we'll also in semester three look at systems around the infant and that's another 20 credit course. So that will take you right up to July. And so each of these semesters, we split the teaching up, apart from your 10 credit modules, which are 5 weeks each. They're each semester split up into 10 weeks of teaching. So each one is a block of 10 weeks. For the first semester, you'll be doing 2 courses. Second one, you'll be doing one. Third one, you'll be doing one. And then in year two, we're going to have 2 core courses, which are 10 credits again. So it follows the same format as the PG Cert year. 2 5-week courses in your first semester. And then in your second semester, you have the choice of 2 20 credit courses. So both of those are 10 weeks long. Depending on your final year decision, what you want to do for your master's, you can choose either research methods or clinical skills in infant mental health. So we wanted to give students the opportunity to study either a research dissertation or to take part in a work placement for their final master's qualification. So we recognise that there's going to be a range of different skills in our students, and we recognise that some would benefit more from doing a research project if they are more interested in academic work, or if they are studying overseas, perhaps it would be more suited to that. But if you are someone who might already be in work within infant mental health, then the work placement might be more suited to you, particularly if you're Scottish based. We've been in touch with a few different options for work placements now. We have a couple of infant mental health teams, and we have a third sector organisation, all of whom are really keen to host our student placements for the final year, which will be super. So, depending on which one of those options you choose for your final submission, you can either choose to study research methods, which will give you all the skills you need for your research dissertation, or you can study clinical skills, which will equip you with all the skills you need to go into your clinical placement. So, even if you've never worked with infants and families before, we'll equip you with the skills that you need to go into that placement. And then for the final semester in the PG DIP year, we're going to offer training in one infant mental health intervention. So we have an agreement with Circle of Security, Video Interaction Guidance, FIG, NBO, so that's Neonatal Behavioural Observation Scale, Mellow Babies, and Watch, Wait, Wonder. And you get to choose one of these interventions to be trained in. And depending on what your current work context is, we can advise you on which of these interventions would be most suited to you. And you'll take part in that training online. Everything is online. And then the aim is that in your placement, if you choose to do a placement, you will get the opportunity to practice that intervention that you've been trained in with supervision from a trained supervisor. So then that takes us to year three, which I've already mentioned, where you can do your final submission for your master's, and you can choose to either do your research dissertation or to do a placement. Now, the assessment of the infant mental health practice, or the placement, is a portfolio, and there'll be some sort of written element to a sort of reflective written piece and a portfolio that you've built up of how your skills have developed through your work placement. Um, and then the alternative is a research dissertation, and the university will provide you with a supervisor, a research supervisor, with an interest in the field and experience of researching within the field. And you can choose what type of research you want to do. It could be a service evaluation within the NHS, it could be a systematic review looking at a different intervention for infant mental health, perhaps, or something else to do with the field of infant mental health. But we've got a really broad range of options of research dissertations for you in your final year, if that's what you're interested in doing. I thought it might be helpful to just give you an overview of how your first year might look. We don't have the weekly headers for the year two courses yet, but this is all the weekly headers for the year one courses. So this is a PG Cert overview. So as I said, there's 4 courses in that first year that you'll cover. There's the 2 10 credit courses and the 2 20 credit courses, all run in 10-week blocks, but the first 2 are split into 2 5-week blocks. And that just gives you a bit of a sense of the topics that we cover within each of these courses. So we cover child development, attachment. We look at infants with exceptional health needs. We had a neonatologist came in and developed content for us for that, which was fantastic. We consider an introduction to neurodiversity. And from a parenting perspective, what can that experience feel like? We then look at adverse childhood experiences. We look at sort of a bioecological view throughout this whole programme, which considers all the multi-leveled influences on the child. So we consider the influences that are proximal to the child and influences which are more distal. We think about theories of development and relationships. We think about brain development. We look into genetics and epigenetics. We consider maltreatment associated psychiatric problems and adverse childhood experiences. And we look at public health approaches to monitoring infant mental health and supporting infant mental health. Then within neurodevelopment and practice, we consider the mental health impact of pregnancy and parenthood. We look at an introduction to observing infant mental health. We consider assessment and formulation, introduction to interventions, supporting infant mental health in a general hospital. And then in the systems around the infant course, we look at all of the various systems that support infant mental health currently. We look at societal and cultural systems, education systems, health systems, family. We consider infant mental health interventions and parenting in the global south. We look at systemic responses to infants at risk and consider systems around the infants in care. We look at legal systems, and throughout all of our courses, we consider lots of case studies to really bring the learning to life. Now, as I said, I don't have the weekly outlines for the PG DIP, but the format of that year will be similar to this because you have your two 10 credit courses and then your two 20 credit courses as well. So for the final one, which will be intervention training, that will be more sort of um, online training with your intervention trainer. And that will be probably done in small groups as well, because I imagine there'll be a few of you might want to be trained in the same one. So you'll get a good opportunity to engage with your course mates then as well. Our aim for this programme is one, to develop graduates with the knowledge and skills to provide meaningful, life-changing support for infant mental health in their own context, and two, to add to the community of experienced and committed individuals holding the infant across the UK and internationally. So I'd like to thank you so much for your time and listening to this presentation. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions for me. And I know Naomi has a few questions as well. So I'm going to let her jump in and ask me any questions that she would like to. But as I said before, please feel free to just interrupt, put your hand up and ask any questions you might have.
Thanks, Fiona. I found that really interesting.
Thanks.
Just a couple of questions just that I spotted, and just things were asked generally about maybe online distance learning and things. But in terms of the placement, how long would something like that maybe last?
Yep. We have yet to nail that down actually. I imagine it'll be around 10 weeks, but the number of hours per week will be varying. I think it's usually 10 weeks for sort of full-time on-campus MSCs, but because it's online, I imagine the hours for that placement will be reduced because the aim is that we can fit around your current working schedule if you're working part-time while studying.
Perfect. And in terms of those each week, so that was really good to see each week what you're getting taught. But how does that work in terms of lectures? Are they just made available that you join at any time that suits you, or is it a certain time throughout the week?
Yeah, I mean, I can share a week's worth of teaching if that would be helpful. So, all of our teaching is online from the minute you sign up for the course. When we do our induction week, all 10 weeks of content is available from then. So, you can work at it at your own pace. There's no need to follow it week by week. I'll share with you an example of what a teaching week looks like so that you can see our format. So each of the weeks is split up into short video clips where we interview different specialists within the field and they can give us some kind of stories or illustrations or perhaps just explain a wee bit more some of the concepts that we introduce in the written content. So we have written content that you can engage with, and then we have our videos. We then have lots of different sort of interactive images that you can engage with and gain your information from there. And every week we'll have a section of different questions that you can answer, a little quiz that helps you sort of consolidate your learning for the week. And we also have a note taking activity, or sometimes a couple of note taking activities through the week, where these will be questions based on the content that you've seen. And this is an example here. So you've read something above, and then we ask you to consider what you've read and answer a couple of questions. And then we get you to post your response in our class Teams page. So for every course, we have our own dedicated Teams space where you can engage with each other and you can ask us questions as a teaching team as well. And each week we'll get you to just respond to some of these questions, just so that we're all sort of keeping up with each other. I've found these note taking activities really helpful for my own learning, because everyone comes with their own, their own experiences from their own context, and so it's really helpful to gather information in that way from myself in terms of your experiences. And it's also really helpful for each of you to be able to engage with each other and feed into each other's responses as well. It's a really nice way of building community, which can be tricky online. So that's just a wee example of what 1 week of teaching looks like.
Perfect. That was really good. I think the visual of just seeing what something that you would be doing would look like.
It's hard to imagine it when you talk about online learning if you haven't done it before.
Yeah, and in terms of assessments, is there standalone assessments that go alongside that, or is that just most?
Yeah, so all of the courses, in fact, will have two assessments. We try and do two smaller assessments rather than one big heavy one, just so that if you kind of do better on one and less well on the other, it sort of evens out instead of putting all of your eggs in one basket and having one high stakes assessment. We try and avoid that as much as possible. So the assessments are designed to fit around what you would normally be doing in your work life anyway. So it would be something along the lines of a brief reflective piece, a short sort of text response to a situation or some learning that you've had. Or it might be we show you a case study vignette and we get you to just analyze it, think about what you're seeing, how you're interpreting it, what the various influences could be on that presentation right now. And then we often, instead of doing two written submissions, we will try and mix it up and have one written one, and then one which is maybe like a recorded PowerPoint or some sort of graphic submission, maybe an infographic or a little leaflet advertising one of the topics that we've considered.
Perfect. And in terms of there's this option for the MSc PG dip, PG cert, could you start with one, leave, come back, do the next bit, come back, do the next bit, or does it have to be kind of that continuous 3 years?
Consecutive. No, I think you have time. I mean, you need to clarify with the admin team, but I believe you've got up to sort of, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to complete an MSc. I don't think there's any requirement that you have to do it one after the other, because life gets in the way, doesn't it? Sometimes you have to take a pause.
Ideal. And I suppose a lot of well, for postgraduate taught on campus programs, a lot of people are looking to maybe go into PhD study afterwards. Do you think there would be scope after this MSc to go into a PhD?
Yeah, absolutely. So the aim, well, one of my key aims for this PhD is to introduce all of our students to a whole range of academics and practitioners within the field. And so throughout your teaching, you'll be getting teaching from these individuals. And if any of them spark an interest in you for further study, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from just reaching out to them. All of their contact details will be available through the course anyway. And we as a team have really good links within the infant mental health academic world and can happily link you up with people who might be interested in supervising PhDs.
Perfect. And I think my last question is just, is there anything that a student can do to prepare for starting their studies?
I don't think so. Perhaps read a little around the field if you're interested, but I mean, our teaching has all been developed to start from a level where everybody is on an equal playing field, no matter what your previous experience is. We want you to come in feeling like you can do it. So we start the course by building the foundations. In that first year, it's all about building foundations of theory. And then in the second year, it's all about building skills. So there's really nothing, there's no sort of way of getting ahead of anyone. It's an even playing field. We want everybody to feel equal and to engage at whatever level they're at.
Perfect. Well, that's the sort of bulk of my questions covered. I don't know if there's anybody that's online that would have anything else. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Lisa. I enrolled for the first year of the course
Yeah.
back in September 2022 and completed the first semester. Unfortunately, I had a cancer diagnosis and had to withdraw. Can I
I'm
pick up
sorry.
from where I left off? I'm okay. Everything's really good.
Okay.
So can I pick up from where I left off, or would it be better to start the course from the beginning again?
I think we'll probably need to have a conversation about that. It's all to do with assessments. If you
Yeah,
have submitted
I'd completed the
assessment,
first two modules and passed them. You know, like, so I think the first one was due in the October and the second one was due in the December. So they had been submitted and passed.
okay, so you did do
And then
both
I had to
assessments.
withdraw, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so the aim in having the micro credential sitting within the MSc is that if you have completed the micro credential, you skip that course within the MSc because you've already got the course credits. So if you've completed both assessments and passed, then you'll have the 10 credits that you need for that module. So you wouldn't have
Okay.
to do them again, Lisa.
And I know that the funding, it was funded for me when I started that course. I don't know what the funding's like for this one. Would it be a case of applying for funding for it, or?
Yeah, so the MSc isn't funded, so you would have to find your own sort of means of funding that.
Okay, thank you.
There are different alternatives, so depending on what your employment background is, if you're an NHS staff member, you get a discount for study, and there's potentially going to be an introductory discounted price, possibly as well. So there's different options. It's not all. There are fees up on the website, but please chat to us.
What about anybody else? Any other questions? Or are we all quite happy? What I will say is don't feel pressure that if you have to get all your questions out now. We do have the administration email address on the programme webpage. So if you go away and watch back the recording, if you think of any other questions, don't sit and try and work it out. Like, get in touch with us. The teams are brilliant, and they'll do their best to help you. So yeah. So Fiona, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add. I think you covered a lot in all those slides. It was really good to see how things looked, how it was all spread out. So I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to finish on, or if we wrap up there.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to wrap up. As Naomi said, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And if you'd like to meet privately, then I'm very happy to do that. I've already met with a couple of students who have had various different questions that they wanted to just chat through one on one, and I'll definitely be delighted to make time to do that.
Well, thanks everybody for coming, and thanks Fiona for taking time out of your day as well. We will follow up with a link to the recording so that you can watch anything back. And yeah, hopefully we see you all in September. So thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.